Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video over on Amazon. And what we're taking a look at this time is something I actually had planned to get and then didn't get and then wound up getting after all. This is an equivalent that we're going to be taking a look at here to an actual new release from the US in 2023. I know, it's crazy. They're actually putting out some new releases, though it's not much. Well, there's an Australian equivalent to something we saw recently from the US that we're going to take a look at in this episode. And it's all really thanks to Matthew Hardesty pointing me to the fact that JB Hi-Fi in Australia was having a buy one, get one sale at one point, which allowed me to get 4 Star Wars items to show you here on the show for only about $100 American. Yay for strong exchange rates that favor this market. I'm sure it sucks to be in Australia trying to import anything from the US though. So you may recall that in 2020, the US got these. The black bordered 4K releases. The other black border ones for the US were in 2019. There's a whole issue with that we'll not deal with here. We've dealt with it plenty in the past. But in 2020, when the original Trilogy films, among others, got their first 4K versions, we got these. The Ultimate Collector's Edition, which is neither Ultimate nor a Collector's Edition, as I always say, which includes the 4K film disc, the Blu-ray film disc, the Blu-ray bonus disc, and a digital code. Not exclusive to anywhere or anything, but we saw these releases back in 2020. And whereas many other regions got some releases in 2022 that were Trilogy sets, the US did not. So the next releases we got were ones we saw very recently that were exclusive to Best Buy, which were the Disney 100 SteelBooks. So this is the SteelBook itself, and they were essentially just this in new packaging. 4K film disc, both Blu-ray discs, digital code. We looked at them before. We're not going to look at the US ones in detail again here, other than to point out again what it had in it. Where you got your code slip, and then it was set up with basically one side for a disc, one side for 2 discs. And you had your J card that had this on the back that we saw, nothing on the top, but that essentially did, as we often see in the US, fit on the back and then just folded over on the top, where it showed the Best Buy logo, the formats at the top, and the limited edition collectible SteelBook thing with the image right there, including the 3 discs that are in it. That's the US stuff that we looked at recently. Well, Australia had a somewhat different pattern that we saw. For instance, back in 2020, when they got their equivalent to the Ultimate Collector's Edition, as is typically the case in many overseas markets, they had the 4K film disc and both Blu-ray discs. They did not have a digital copy code in there at all. We looked at these in depth back then. And then in 2022, they got what the US did not get with some releases of the trilogies in different formats. For the original trilogy, there was a slip-covered set here that was just the 4K discs for the films and nothing else. A Blu-ray set, except again, it was the Blu-ray film disc and nothing else, no Blu-ray bonus disc or any other formats or anything like that, and a DVD version. And it is worth very quickly here looking at the DVD version to see that the DVD labels were the labels from 2020, just in this case, packaged together in a nice little set, all marked on here and over here as 3-disc sets, which is sort of the style of the packaging that we see over there right now. Fast forward to this year, to 2023, and as the US is getting our Disney 100 SteelBooks, so is Australia. But with a twist, not just on comparison to the US, but a certain component in comparison to even as late as the previous year. So what we're going to look at here are the Disney 100 SteelBooks from Australia for the original trilogy. These are JB Hi-Fi exclusives over in Australia. They are not wide release, just like in the US they were from Best Buy. You notice here, first of all, that the J card is a little bit different. We will see this as we go. So we have 4K Ultra HD written out rather than the logo, plus Blu-ray bonus disc, plus DVD. Yes, this release out of Australia, as opposed to in the US, is a 3-generation format release. 4K, HD with the Blu-ray, and SD with DVD. Kind of an interesting tweak, kind of what made me really want to get these to be able to show these as well. Then you have your image up here, noting the fact that it's a limited edition collectible SteelBook, and the image shows all the discs with the labels as of 2020 and 2022. We will see that is not actually accurate. Over here, instead of telling you where it's from, it just says limited edition right there in the corner. It is a little bit bigger. It dips down a little bit further on this side, at least, compared to the American release. There is no top to this. It slips on over the top. Okay, so it actually does have sides. It has the Ultra HD Blu-ray logo here, because that's the highest end format, presumably. Is a 4-disc set, as noted here. Product number and the rating. Effectively the same thing on the other side, but it's not one giant piece of cardboard. It's a little piece that we'll see. I'll take it off and show you kind of what it looks like physically. Down here, you got your rating as well, just like you did over there on the side. And then the back gives us this as the setup. A significantly different back to what we saw with either their releases back in 2020 or the releases of the other SteelBooks, at least in the United States, in the same year here. So we've got a description, images, special features, noting audio commentaries, cast crew, tech specs, your information down here as far as regions and whatnot, and rating. And region will matter because, again, 4K, not a region-based kind of thing to worry about. Blu-ray-wise, ABC, all region, play it anywhere. DVD, PAL, region 4. You take this off, and before we look at the SteelBook itself, again, it's kind of nifty here in that it is it's not quite just a ring around it, but it's also not quite a front-back type thing that folds over. It's kind of this interesting just thing that slips over the top of it. Kind of a partial slip cover, you might say. Now, the SteelBook itself is essentially the same as the US version from the outside, at least. You got the Disney 100 that's slightly embossed. You got the image there in the center. You've got the logo down here. You've got the Disney Blu-ray thing here. The logo again looking kind of weird because A New Hope is so short. Then down here, the Disney 100. And then on the back, you've got your Rebel symbol. So all that essentially the same. But you open it up, and one, there's no code slip. But because there's more discs, this one has one disc on this side, as you'd see in the US version, but then an arm to hold 2 more discs, and then a backspace to hold the other disc. And that last disc there, you probably notice, is a little bit different. This is sort of your standard release here that you would expect from this market, from Australia for 4K. No big shock there. We got our release here on Blu-ray for the film, no shock there. We got our Blu-ray bonus disc, again, no shock there, and playable wherever because it's all region. But then DVD-wise, this is the DVD that's provided. It's like what they did with some of those later Star Wars TV releases, like I think like Resistance Season 1, the one season they actually put out, where it just went to sort of a standardized white and silver label. I'm trying to get the reflection off of here. Like a white and silver label instead of a more traditional label. Because remember, when released as late as last year, they were still using those 2020 labels on the DVDs. But for whatever reason, despite the fact that it shows the old label up here, the disc is now set up with that white label. So, kind of hard to see because of the reflection. I'll try to angle it. It says Star Wars A New Hope, has a logo up top, DVD video, enormous off to the side, Region 4, PAL, product number, Lucasfilm, no copying, blah, 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 and other legalese running there on the bottom. You put it in, it is the same thing as what you would have gotten in 2020 or 2022. There's no difference to the content, but they've made it so that label-wise we have this different style to it that is more uniform to what we have seen with some other Disney releases, including some Star Wars releases, even in the United States. Just not something we've typically seen for Star Wars film releases in the United States, at least not for standard, mainstream film discs. Inside is, again, the same interior artwork there. And, of course, coinciding with that, we have The Empire Strikes Back. And there's your back setup. Similar to that, but very different than what we see on the US version, right? Just changing up the design there a little bit. Inside, what you would expect, same setup, but again, alongside your regular, it doesn't want to turn here, alongside your regular 4K film disc, Blu-ray film disc, and Blu-ray bonus disc, we've also got this white labeled Empire DVD. Then finally, we have the one that for me had the roughest ride overseas, apparently, which is Return of the Jedi here. Mine has a pretty significant ding over here. But again, a different back to what we see with the setup here. Similar, but certainly not the same design here. And in every case, even though the disc picture up in the corner would suggest regular discs, for DVD, it is that different label. So if you are someone, again, just, bugs me that it was dinged, but I don't want to ask for a replacement, have it sent all the way from Australia, especially when it was a BOGO, buy one, get one free kind of thing. So for right now, I'm living with it. I could do that to myself by dropping something someday. I always try to think of, what slip on my end could cause the same thing. Is it worth swapping if I could have accidentally caused it? In any event. But yes, so basically what we're seeing here are the same 4K and Blu-ray and sort of DVD discs that we saw in 2020 and then in 2022 in Australia, which in 2022 you could have gotten in these that we looked at the time. Except they've taken the DVD discs, kept the same content, and just given them new labels, where their labels aren't really Star Wars centered at all. They are much more like what we see from sort of the traditional generic Disney white labels. But I know that as collectors, nuances matter for us, so maybe the fact that these are not just 4K and Blu-ray with the bonus disc, but 4K Blu-ray with the bonus disc and DVD, and the fact that the DVDs have a different label than what we've seen before, maybe that will drive other collectors to want to pick these up as well. So that again is your JB Hi-Fi exclusive Trilogy of Disney 100 SteelBooks. If you're in the US, the favorable exchange rate should make it easier to order these from JB Hi-Fi's website. If you are elsewhere, your mileage may vary. My thanks again to Matthew Hardesty for pointing me to that BOGO sale, because I'm not sure I would have picked this up without it. I considered it, but then I dropped the consideration, and it was the BOGO that got me to pick him up, and I'm glad I did, to be able to show not only this different approach with the DVD included, but the fact that the DVD labels are different themselves, which is kind of an intriguing thing for nitpicky minds like mine. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.